In a world that is so hectic, how do we quiet the mind to reach deeper levels of meditation? How do we learn to let go of attachments and find peace in our lives when everything is constantly changing? I met up with Shane Wilson, who leads group meditations at the Arizona International Buddhist Meditation Center in Mesa, Arizona, to get some answers to these questions. Okay, I am Clint Culberson, lordsofconsciousness.com. I'm here today with a friend and someone who's just like a beacon in our own community here in Arizona. And we're at the Arizona International Buddhist Meditation Center, and I'm here with Shane Wilson. How are you, Shane?
Great. I'm great. Nice to have you here, Clint. Thank you.
Yeah, we just had a 90-minute meditation here before we started this interview, and you have been in meditation for how many years? How long has it been a practice in your own life?
A practice? I guess I was kind of a late bloomer, actually. I've been practicing for about a little over 20 years probably, and then I really took to it. I always had an interest in it, and then I started teaching about 15 years ago. Yeah, and it's been a part of my life. One interesting thing about it, right off the bat, I was a musician before that, and when I learned about meditation, I heard it as a practice, just like learning a musical instrument or a language or anything like that. So once I started doing the meditation and doing it as a practice, just like when I was learning a musical instrument itself, doing it on a daily basis. So I really took to it, and in a way I took it very seriously, because I did see the benefits of it in my life. And then I started seeing the benefits in other people's lives, and that's when I really decided that this is some worthwhile stuff. And then one thing led to another, and I started teaching meditation.
So you've started it 20 years ago, and you've become a teacher. You're an author of 2 books, even. They're called Meditation, the Great Teacher, and Minding the Breath. Mm-hmm. And you're also part of a meditation learning center are you the director of?
Yeah, director, founder, the main teacher. The meditation learning center started about 15 years ago, and it's in Mesa, Arizona here. And the primary thing we're doing now anyway is teaching people how to teach. And so we're really utilizing the online educational platforms and putting it out there on an online basis. So it's instead of just we're doing a lot of work in the community, but also worldwide now with that.
What's the website?
Meditationlearningcenter.com.
Meditationlearningcenter.com. Mm-hmm. Perfect. And they can get. If you're someone who's never done it before, this would be a great resource to start.
Yeah, absolutely. There's all sorts of programs. We have some beginning programs that are taught here in this temple. And there's some programs that are taught at the Meditation Learning Center, not too far from here as well. Mm. So it's really there's a lot of different things happening, between the Arizona International Buddhist Meditation Center and the Meditation Learning Center. There's some confusion because of the names being similar, but there's it's really one kind of one unit in a way. In that I participate in both of them, quite a bit. Yeah.
A lot of people who have not made meditation a part of their practice, and they think about it, and they maybe even try it 1 or 2 times, and sometimes people just say, "Oh, I just can't turn my mind off.
They sure do.
I just can't. It's just not meant for me, or it's not.
Yeah.
What advice do you give someone who's in that predicament?
They have to be gentle with themselves, and possibly not take it as serious as, for example, as I did. I really wanted to change some things in my life at the time when I started the practice, and that's kind of why I dove into it. But in an individual, consistency is really important. To do it on a daily basis, but not necessarily for long lengths of time, whatever a person is comfortable with. To sit in silence for 10 minutes a day, for most people would be would be a perfect practice for a while. Once they notice the benefits and see the benefits that it's making for them, it'll lengthen on its own. They'll start sitting and doing. When I say sitting, I'm talking about the formal practice of meditation, and they'll start sitting more and lengthening that practice.
Right.
And
so, what's on the other side of that mind that is always constantly chattering? What's on the other side of that? For someone who maybe that has never even experienced it, maybe their mind is constantly going, maybe there's constantly distractions going on, that there's actually this place within themselves that they haven't seen in a long time, maybe not since they were a child.
Right.
What is on the other side of that?
Right. Presence, silence. It's that area seemingly between the past and the future. If somebody's got a lot on their mind, so to speak, they're really looking at something that happened to them, that's something that they might not want to happen again. So they're kind of involved with the past, and they're trying to fix something that they think might happen in the future. So there could be some anger and fear involved in there, some restlessness and some worry. These continual thoughts that keep arising, habitual patterns of thinking. And actually, very few people have that happening all the time. It's just that they don't recognize that presence. That's I like to kind of point out that it seems like it's sandwiched in between the past and the future, this presence, this stillness. And it's a place that everybody touches, and they get there, but they don't really recognize it. And some people don't even feel safe there because they're not really comfortable with what it is. And so, again, on a habitual way, we like to kind of, if we don't feel like we're thinking about the past or working with the future, we feel like we're not really doing our job in some ways. And so, in many respects, what meditation does is allows us to come into this presence, and it could be called stillness, it could be called the now, it could be called a lot of different things, but primarily, and this is one method of meditation, is to find that presence by focusing on something such as the breath. Focusing, even if we're focusing on a task, we notice that we're very much in that moment. Whatever we're doing, and our meditation practice is pointing us in that direction. That's why it's called a practice, and something that we can recognize and use out in our world on a daily basis, which is what we refer to as mindfulness. And there are other ways to meditate as well. There's ways to kind of like a cognition type meditations where we contemplate something. If we contemplate whether it's some piece of spiritual literature, or maybe even contemplate an idea or something that inspires us, which is what a lot of people want to use meditation for. They want to use it to enhance their lives, and so they want to be inspired somehow, or inspire other people. So if that's the case, a person could use meditation to kind of contain an idea or a subject, and not allow the mind to drift outside of that. So we're still being very, very present. We're looking at something in the present moment as much as we can, without letting the mind wander. And so contemplation, it can be a part of it too, and all part of the meditation practices, whether it involves a great deal of focus and concentration in looking at one thing to bring us into this presence, or if it's to contemplate an idea, something a little bit broader, so the meditation object is a little bit larger, we could say.
So is meditation a tool of healing? I mean, you had brought up the idea that some people have trouble getting in the now because they're worried about something that happened in the past, and then predicting the future of future events based on what's happened in the past. Or oftentimes, maybe even built around trauma, things like that. Dr. Gabor Mate is bringing some amazing findings to the world, where addiction is coming from. And addiction, of course, is people with addiction have a lot of trouble staying in the now. Beyond meditation, I suppose, is meditation combined with other healing? Like when you go into meditation, and if you can find that silence, then when you come out of your meditation, what do you? I guess where do you go from there?
To kind of get back to the healing aspect, I guess that's what we're talking about. Is first of all, a lot of what comes out of a meditation practice is probably what most people would agree with is a great amount of clarity, clarity of mind, and we begin to understand ourselves better, and then consequently understand others as well. And in that understanding, we can really find out a great deal of information as far as what makes us happy and what gets us stressed out. And the stress, the reports are kind of conflicting, but a lot of the reports agree that about 90% of the hospital visits are from stress. And one way to combat that stress, for sure, is through meditation. In the area of addiction, there's starting to be a lot of work and a lot of uses of meditation and mindfulness, in the recovery treatments, more and more all the time. And again, meditation really does allow a person to understand why and how this addiction started in the first place. And once that is seen kind of on a clearer level, it's more applicable to use it as a release from that addiction, particularly in the area of triggers. What triggers a person to reach for this thing? And even in Buddhism, the Buddha talked about this grasping and clinging and these desires that we have. And he said that the suffering that we have in life is from these desires. And a lot of it is just realizing that we have this desire for things to be different than what they currently are. And once we realize that, we can see what we're reaching for to change that in ourselves, or change it in our what seems like our environment out there. So what are we reaching for, and can we catch ourselves from doing that beforehand? Because it's not really necessary for us to reach for these things to change, whether it's TV or the internet or the cell phone or a drug, a cigarette or alcohol, whatever it might be. If we can be mindful enough when these triggers come up to recognize them as just triggers. Earlier today we were talking about how it feels when anger comes up, and how we react to that anger, whether it's spontaneous or not, whether it and the fella asked me, he said, do I still get angry? And I said, of course I still get angry, but I see it as anger before there's that reaction, that habitual action to it. So it might have a completely different flavor to the person outside. It might seem like there's no anger at all, but it arises. And it's like seeing a trigger for an addicted person. If they can see that trigger and see it as the trigger itself, and be aware of that, and apply that to their recovery, they stand a really good chance. And it's a very, very becoming a very, very big part of recovery these days, to teach people that area.
Are we constantly healing? I mean, is healing a lifelong process? Or is there, the Buddha reached enlightenment. He said he did. Was he done healing? I mean, did he heal from the
Well, there's the worldly aspect and the unworldly aspect. And I believe that when somebody, we're this program, Lords of Consciousness, we're talking about consciousness and awareness, and what that consists of. And in most respects, when we talk about consciousness, we're talking about inner, the inside, what is happening in here. And I think it is possible to heal the inside. It might not appear so on the outside. Even Buddha died from food poisoning, and he had a rough last 3 days of his life. He was an old man, and he wasn't doing very well, from the bodily aspects. But on the inside, he was still very much the Buddha, and he gave some very wonderful teachings up until the very, very end of his life. And so I think he was healed internally, mentally, I guess we could say, on a conscious level.
Yeah.
But to the average person viewing it, they might see a sick Buddha laying there. And just like us, I think we can heal to a certain extent if we awaken, through these practices and through these things that we do. If we actually, it's said that enlightenment is actually the idea that we can see that the self is just an illusion, and if we see that the self is an illusion, we can also notice that the body, when the body is ill, for example, doesn't have to have that effect on us. Where we recognize that it's just the body being ill, just like a trigger, it is a trigger, or a anger is just anger, things that are coming up for us.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Buddha talked about this idea of impermanence, and it seems to be very a core foundation, I guess, to Buddhist philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain to those listening what does impermanence mean, and how does that show up in our lives, and what was the overall teaching of it?
The impermanence, a lot of people have different ideas of what that means, and then when they hear that, they initially somebody might get sad from hearing that information, that the feeling that this is impermanent and everything's coming to an end and that type of thing. But in the teaching and the understanding of that, if we look at why we suffer, for example, we suffer because we're hanging on to, we want things to stay the same. When we find something that we really like, something that makes us feel good, makes us feel happy, for example, we want that to stay. But the law of impermanence doesn't allow that to happen. Our view of it will change, or that object will change, that person, place, or thing will change. Even on a microscopic level, everything is changing. Even a diamond, the hardest substance, that we know of, changes as well. But the idea, once we realize that everything in our world, I like to explain it by using and pointing out the idea that everything is borrowed, that nothing is really ours. And what that does, and if we really believe that and understand it, we really begin to loosen up a lot of the struggle that we have. We don't have to strive to have what we consider ownership as much. We can even appreciate things more, that we don't have to contain these things and take care of them so much, that it is temporary, that it's impermanent, and that it is borrowed. Even this body is borrowed. Everything in the world, in the world out there, is borrowed. Everything is completely changing. So it's not negative information. It's not sad information. It's actually very, very liberating and very freeing to know that we are these type of beings that can go through the world and enjoy and appreciate every aspect of the world, and not have to call it ours, not to have to call it something that is tangible and that has to be in our ownership for us to really appreciate it.
Would you say then that the attachment to results in our lives is suffering? I mean, is that what the Buddha would say? I mean, maybe it's attachment to desire. We want it to go a certain way and it doesn't. Yeah. Or we want our children to live forever, but maybe they don't. Or maybe, we want everyone in our lives to have joy and to keep it going forever, and it doesn't.
That leads to a lot of the suffering, for sure. The idea that we want control, and to relinquish control is like letting that burden fall right off the shoulders. If we just imagine, if we had a huge corporation, for example, and that we were struggling with it all these years, and finally the retirement came about for us, so we relinquished the control to whomever, it would be a great relief. It would be a kind of a life-changing experience for us too, but it would be a type of freedom, for us to have that, to stop us from hanging on to something, with such force, and to open our hands and let it be shared with everyone is a freedom. It's a form of liberation.
Jesus Christ, who lived. Were him and Buddha about 500 years apart? Am I right, or 400? Or they were.
Well, it would have been about 300.
300. Okay. Yeah, he was, he's well known for his message of compassion, and to love one another, if you will. Is when you think of Christ consciousness, even you think of love comes to mind. But Buddha himself talked a lot about compassion. And if you could you sum up his message, and did it at all? Was it any different than what Christ was saying, or was there a different angle in which he saw it?
No, I think the teachers, when we talk about the higher teachings, we don't even have to give any names really, but I think the teachings are all parallel, in that respect. Having compassion is just having compassion, really. I mean, there's a part of a practice we did in the meditation. We did a loving kindness practice, or what is called metta, which we start with ourselves. We open up, which is really a heart opener. We open up the heart, and that's why we start with ourselves, and then we let this loving kindness that we have to kind of permeate everybody and everything, even our enemies, and all beings, all plants, all animals, and that aspect is very healing for us. And another area is the renunciation that we were talking about, the letting go, and which is a very, very key part of Buddhism or any spiritual teaching, is that opening up, and it's a part of sharing. That's very healing for us too. But then when we get into compassion, we are showing compassion. We can certainly show compassion for ourselves, but we're actually we're kind of shining that light of consciousness out into the world, and showing compassion for the people and all beings, out in the world. And that has to be a core teaching for all spiritual teachers. Otherwise, the reversal of that is the selfing and the ego and everything that we are kind of counteracting, or should be counteracting, as far as seeing this oneness, and experiencing this oneness, and so we can really stop that division, or this duality that we see between us and others. Compassion is key, I think, for all of the spiritual teachings, whether it's Buddha or Jesus or Muhammad or whatever it might be.
Well, the world never needed more of it than it does now, and it does seem like that's the awakening that's taking place in the world right now. It's an awakening of understanding others. The technologies that we have now have opened us up to the way each of us live, and then we have compassion. It's like easier to understand what each other are going through and who each other are, and that's compassion. Just to have that understanding and to not have attachments. Again, to what others are doing, just to see them for who they are. Exactly. and to love them in that space. And I think the Buddha, he accomplished that, and he accomplished that pure compassion, just like Christ did. These teachers that came to us on this planet, especially during a time period that was very warlike, far more warlike than it is even now, and for them to come with this message that shot through, the millennia is now over 2 millennia,
right.
And they're still here. And it's now we are starting to realize, though, it's not that we need to worship or to look outside of ourselves for some sort of savior per se, but is to look within, to find the Buddha within you, to find the Christ within you. One thing that Buddha said that is something that I've experienced on my own journey of self-awareness is that enlightenment, we already are enlightened. It's not something that we are, that we don't have and that we're headed towards. I mean, through some lens, it does look like that, but he said we already are enlightened. We've forgotten about it. And I guess my question to you then, is this life somewhat of a remembrance of something that already is?
I think so. The teaching that comes to mind, which isn't really a teaching at all, but the Buddha said not to believe anything that you read or that you hear from somebody else, or that somebody else has told you, or not to believe that unless you've had this experiential understanding. Mm-hmm. And he said in so many words or in so many ways that if we cultivate the mind, through what I use is the practice of meditation. That's what I do. I teach meditation, and to cultivate the mind through that practice and through other practices too, that we have all the information inside of us. It's not out there. We can enjoy reading books. We can enjoy hearing teachings. We can enjoy getting information from different videos and our friends and teachers. But the real information is what the Buddha said is already inside of us. It's just waiting to come out and waiting for us to discover it. And then when that happens, that is what I would consider awakening or enlightenment, when that is discovered and that comes out. Yeah. Through the practice or whatever it means it might be. Sometimes it's very spontaneous for people. They have a life-changing thing, something happens in their life that sparks that. And for other people, it's very, very gradual, which it can be part of the practice. Mm. That's how different ways that can work for different people. But to have this clarity and to understand that all the answers are inside of us, and just waiting to bubble up and express themselves.
Mm. What would you agree that everything on our exterior is only a manifestation of our interior? Every idea started on the inside of one soul, or maybe a collective group of souls. I mean, even this sculpture, this statue of Buddha behind you started as an idea in someone's mind, and they put together the exterior, materials to make it happen. And yet so often in this world we're always looking on the exterior for our inspiration or our the spark, or we think that has to come from there. How can meditation train us in understanding that? How does the practice of meditation, how does it take us into that reality of it starts within? It's like this fractal universe of starting small and going big, and how does meditation channel that for us?
I think in a way we're kind of talking about manifesting and not necessarily and co-creating, but not necessarily intentionally, but seeing how it happens on its own. Like even our meeting here, you know, what brought us together at this point. We met about a year, maybe a year ago in this room, I believe, and you came in, and there was some kind of information got put out there where we were able to meet, and then we formed this kind of this friendship, and through different media types, we came together, and we're doing this. And so, yeah, it's a manifestation, not necessarily anything that we were conscious trying to create, but it is creating. We did create it, and I think it is true with everything. And this entire room here was built as an addition onto this home. The monk had an idea of putting a meditation hall in here. They got together the money for it, you know, through donations, and they put it all together. And so here we are. We met, you know, and then here we are in this room. The Buddha came from Sri Lanka, and they ordered, you know, they brought it in over on the ship, and all the pieces come together. And as far as meditation, I think that silence, that presence, is when we go into that, we get a glimpse of how it all works and how it all comes together for us. When we're kind of thrust in the world and we're worrying about the future and the past, which is really just the mind being the mind. There's nothing wrong with dwelling on the future or dwelling on the past, but when it's done obsessively, we don't really get a glimpse of why everything is working the way it's working. When we go into that stillness and presence, it begins to make a lot more sense for us, just from the clarity of the mind that comes about from that practice of meditation.
So today, for example, we're doing a small group meditation, and you know, science is starting to prove that group meditation, especially on a very large scale, can actually affect the events that are taking place on the globe. So, I mean, you as, you know, Mr. Meditation, I mean, do you ever fantasize about the idea of, man, imagine a world where the vast majority of us have a regular practice, and what could we collectively collaborate on with just from the power of our minds, you know?
Yeah,
what does that even look like? It's almost like this it's over the event horizon of where humanity could go, especially as we put conscious intention together. And I mean, some people might claim that the monks, you know, in Tibet have been holding a space on the globe, you know, and what's the point of those guys? They're just sitting up in a cave, you know, doing nothing. They should be out helping people, but maybe they are helping people, but there's other stuff going on, you know. There is this like collective, like shared mind, in a sense, among humanity.
There's so much that we don't have this clear understanding of why it works the way it works, and we don't have the instruments to measure, you know, the such things as consciousness and awareness, and how it all affects each other and these kinds of things. But we know that when we are in a room with people meditating, for example, it feels different for us, and there's a different kind of energy, if we're meditating outdoors or in a different room or things like that, there's different things happening, and we can tell that, but we can't explain why it is. We just know we can explain it through feelings and states and these kinds of things. But I really strongly feel that if we had instruments to measure these connective awarenesses, you know, that we have amongst people, and that we would be completely amazed. Someday this will be, you know, available to us, how one group can work with and affect another group, because we know it happens. We just don't have we don't have the proof of why it happens. But with I think with modern technology, eventually we will be able to, through quantum physics and things like that, we will understand more and more, as we go.
Yeah.
But most people agree that it's a fact, that it does. We do have effect on everybody that we come in contact with in our world, and so every person that we have contact with is a form of a relationship, and if we remember that, I think that's the best impact we can have, and making the world a better place through these practices and through connecting with other people.
Yeah, and when you really start considering the depths of how far it goes, I think the Buddha said this, that it's like we're not just a drop in the ocean, we are the ocean, and each of us are in that way, and it's like we are experiencing these lives through these, Shane Wilson avatar, or Quint Culberson avatar, or whatever you want to call it, but at the end of the day, it goes far beyond that, and it's especially as we still our minds and we make meditation a part of our practice, whatever you want to call it, whatever version of meditation you do, just of the way of finding inner stillness, inner peace, calming things down, slowing them down, and coming into the present moment as much as we possibly can. And there is nirvana, as Buddha would call it, waiting on the other side of it if we're patient and enough to get to it. So
right. Yeah,
it's beautiful. What a beautiful experience it is to be human. Buddha, that's what he would always say. Buddha wasn't looking to be famous. He wants to just be a regular person. I think that was like part of his message, is that, is to just laugh. Laughter is actually far more enlightening than even some serious conversation. It's like the children get it, right?
Yeah, the Buddha, he wasn't even sure. He got it, like you said. He got it himself. He wasn't sure whether he even wanted to teach. Yeah, and then thankfully he did, because these teachings are continuing today. But he felt as if there's a lot of people that just wouldn't understand. That. And one of the main things he was talking about was cause and effect, that everything that we do in this world has a result. If we roll a ball, for example, and we stop rolling the ball continues to roll on its own. And the same way with our thoughts and our actions, and whether it's speech, and it all has an effect. And that's another key area in meditation that allows us to see and understand all of that.
Yeah.
We see it, we see the results, and we know that there's this cause and effect, or what we could call karma. These actions do have results to them, and none of them are wasted. If hopefully we don't waste a single action.
Shane, tell us where people can find you and what you're doing. Maybe please share the website again, and maybe you could even discuss the retreat that you have coming up in is it Payson, Arizona, in September?
Yeah, there's every Labor Day and Memorial Weekend we have a meditation retreat up in it's called the Merit Center up in Payson, and more information about that. We have Labor Day coming up, so. It starts on in a few weeks, I guess. September 2nd is the Labor Day weekend retreat. It's a silent retreat. More information can be found at meditationlearningcenter.com.
4 days of silence, huh?
4 days. Yeah, I think it's about a total of maybe 65 hours of silence or something like that. It's a deep practice, and it's very good. We even have beginners.
If you want to reset your life, there's a way to reset your life.
It'll do it, but it's not as difficult as a person might think, because everybody is silent, and we just stop talking, And I continue to talk a little bit during the retreat because I'm teaching, but for the most part, it's a silent retreat, which I believe are the best ones, because the depth, you can really go deep and realize that there's a lot of wasted energy by spewing out these words and things like that, and rather than just containing that energy and just be mindful and think about everything that you're doing, all the actions, kind of like what we were talking about before. But Yeah, meditationlearningcenter.com. There's all sorts of materials and different things to access as far as what a person wants out of meditation, or how to get started, or how to continue, and even certification programs and things like that.
Excellent. And then also Sunday mornings here at the...
Yeah, Sunday mornings here. This is Sunday morning now. Sunday mornings here at the AIBMC at 432 Temple Street in Mesa, and Wednesday evenings at 7 o'clock on Wednesday evenings at the same location. We've been doing the Wednesday evening meditation meetings for about 8 years now, and we always get beginners, and we get people that have been meditating for years. Usually get a crowd of about 25, 30 people, so it's a nice little group.
And children too.
And some children.
Yeah.
We had a 10-year-old here today, huh?
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Shane, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to talk with you, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Santussako ca subharo ca appakicco ca sallavaka utti Santindriyo ca nipabo ca appagabha